Let's talk about a constructor and destructor in object-oriented programming with Python. What is a constructor? A constructor is a special method or function that is invoked automatically when an object of a class is created, which means immediately we create an object of a class, an instance of this class, this function is invoked automatically. And this function is defined by using this keyword, $init, then you're followed by your parentheses. Then what is a destructor? A destructor is just exactly the opposite of a constructor. It's another special method or function that is invoked when an object is deleted using the del command. So when we create an object now, employee, and we have an employee, employee1, and now when we are deleting this object, employee1, using the del command, just like this, del employee1. This function will be called once we are deleting this object. So destructor for class is mandatory when an object claims resources dynamically. Now we want these resources to be released before the program exits or complete. Otherwise, if we do not release these resources, they may remain allocated and they will not be available to be used by other programs. So we want to make sure that having a destructor is mandatory for classes. So we can just, if there are some variables that are taking up space in our code, we want to make sure that these variables are clear and they are destroyed when we are exiting this code itself. So let's have an example to illustrate the use of a constructor and a destructor. We want to create a class that represents an employee, and we want to have some members of this employee such as name, earning, and bonus. I want to have some function to input data, to compute bonus, and to output the desired information about this employee. So how are we going to go about that now? So the first thing we want to do is to go ahead and create our class. So we'll go ahead and say class employee. So now we have defined our class, right? So we have a class employee here now. So the first thing we want to do at the beginning of our code is have a constructor. So these are functions that are automatically invoked when we create an instance of this object. So in our constructor now, we just want to have a function. I want to call this, just as we said earlier, def init. Then we want to have just one keyword itself. But here we want to have some parameters that I want to pass into this function, and that's its name, which we would like to set to an empty string. Then we want to have the earning of this employee, just set it to 0. Then we want to have the bonus. I want to set this bonus to 0. So right here we have a function now that is computing a function, a constructor for this class employee. So what we want to do now is to go ahead and set the instance of the name of this object to the name that come in with this constructor. So just go ahead and say name and do the same thing for the earning. Set it to any. Then we want to do the same thing for the bonus. Just go ahead and repeat the same thing for the bonus right here. So now we now go ahead and start creating some functions that we want to use in this program. And the first function I would like to create now is a function to input the employee data. So I'll just go ahead and say, let me just write a comment here and say function to input So what I'll just go ahead and say, I'll call this function input data. Then I want to have myself. So when I'm working with class, always have this yourself as a parameter by default. So I'll just go ahead and say self.name is equals to input. Then I want to write a prompt right here, but I want this to appear on a new line. So I just give it that new line character. Let's go ahead and say enter name of employee. Then what else do you want to collect? You want to collect the earning of this employee. Self.earning. Just go ahead and say input. Enter earning rounded, because we want this user to enter a rounded earning point for us. And one thing is that earning is meant to be an integer, right? But when we are collecting from input, we are going to be collecting it as a string. So we want to convert this to an integer by default. So as the input is coming, we want to convert it to an integer. So we are storing this as an integer. So the next function we want to have now is a function that will compute the bonus of this employee. So I'll just go ahead and say a function to compute bonus right here. So if this function is computing the bonus, just go ahead and say def compute bonus. Then this is just myself as usual. Then we want to have temporary bonus right here, and just want to set it to 0. And we want to check the any, and at any point if this any is less than 10k, we want to set this bonus to 0. So I'll just go ahead and say if self.any is less than or equals to 10k. Okay, alright, that's 10k. Should we go with 10k? Okay, let's make it 100k. So if this any is less than or equals to 100k, we want to set this temporary bonus to 0. But else if now, we want to go with elif now. If self.any right here is less than or equals to 200k. So what do you want to do if the any is less than or equals to 200k? So what we want to do is to have a temporary bonus right here. And which mechanism should we use for this? Okay, we would like to have 1,000 plus 10% of the excess of the salary over 100k. And what do we mean by that? So that's just like, okay, we want to set the temporary bonus to 1,000, then we are adding, I just add 10% right here of the excess. First, we need to get the excess money after the starting point, which is 100k right here. So we just want to get it self.any right here minus 100k. Okay, self.any, then we want to multiply by 10%, which is 10 over 100, and that's 0.01. So we want to just do this calculation right here and get the bonus. So I'll just go ahead and copy the same thing right here, come here, paste it down here. Okay, so we have our function here, and here I want to check if it is less than or equals to 3,000, then 300,000. Then here I'll be making it 2,000 plus 20% instead, and now it will be self.any minus 200. This is the overflow from the last point. Then else, I want to have my else function here. I want to have temporary bonus now to be 4,000. Okay, and just copy from here, right here. Okay, and here will be 300,000. Then 3 right here. So right here we have this little calculation that helps us to calculate our bonus. So what we want to do now is, after getting this bonus, I want to go ahead and say self.bonus right here is equals to temporary bonus. And now that we have this temporary bonus right there, and we've set this bonus to temporary bonus, so we are done with our function. And here we want to have the last function right here, and that's just to display the data. I'm just going to go ahead and say def output data. So I'm having this function that is going to output my data. So I'm going to just go ahead and say print right here. Let's make this be on inline, the name of the employee, self.name. So I want to print out the name of the employee. They want to print out the bonus of the employee too. So just go ahead and say bonus to be played. So I have percentage here. And just go ahead and cut this part out. Move this parentheses and just come here and put this percentage here. This is a part here. Okay. then a comma here. So here we have this value. So now we can go ahead and create an object and see how this works. So I'm just going to create some code here, and I'm going to say employee1. And here we will see how this constructor works. Don't forget that right here we created a constructor here, and this constructor takes in the name, the any, and initially the bonus, which is set to 0. Initially we set the bonus, the any2 to 0, but we have to input those things there. So I'm just going to go ahead and say this is employee, and here I decide not to give it any information. Then I can just go ahead and say I want to give it here by calling the input function here. So if I should go ahead and run this program right here, see that it is asking me for the name of the employee. I can decide and say, okay, my name is Andrew, and here is asking me for the amount of money ahead. So let's just assume, say 150k right here. Okay, so now it has inputted that data, but I'm not getting anything in return. This is because I am not computing the bonus and I'm not bringing out an output. So if I go ahead and say employee.compute bonus, and I go ahead and say employee1.output data. So if I should go ahead and run this again, and I'll just repeat the same thing again. Andrew right here, then 150k right here. And here, you see that name of employee is Andrew, and the bonus to be paid is 1,500, right? And that's in 2 decimal places, and that's why we added this right there. So now we can see how that works, but we are not really showing the use of the constructor itself here. So instead of me inputting this data right here, I can decide to give it to the constructor initially, so I will not have to input it again. So what will I do instead of that? If I want to do that, I can just go ahead and remove this right here, and just leave it with only the compute, bonus, and output data, and I give it a name of Andrew. Okay, alright, and after giving it a name of Andrew right here, then I can give it an aim of 450k. So what if I run this? What will happen? Okay, alright. Alright, we are getting this error because my constructor method is wrongly defined. I said init, just right here, init, and I omitted the I right there in the constructor method. So once we've omitted the input data function now, and we can still use this, and now you can see we are still getting 85k because we have our constructor method rightly defined now, and we have name, any, and even if we set the bonus wrongly initially to something like 5,500, can see it's still computed. But let's say I am not doing this right here, and I just run it, can see it's giving me the bonus I give to it by default when I just press output data. So that is how constructor method works. But let's say now we have a destructor right here, def, just go like this, del, and all we just print out something like object is destroyed. We print out object is destroyed, and right here, if I should go ahead and run this code, you can see object is destroyed. I am not calling the delete object. And why am I receiving object is destroyed? At the beginning of the class, remember I told you that the destructor is mandatory for every program, so it is automatically called when exiting a code. Always automatically called when exiting a code, and that is what I mean by destructor program is mandatory. But now let's say I decided to call delete function right here for employee 1. So I'm deleting employee 1 right here. You can see it's deleted, object is destroyed. I see that. I'm not getting that again. Right here is an exercise for you. Create a class named student with the following specification. Have some private members which are also functions or variables, which can be the admission no, the name, mark English, mark math, mark in science, and a total score of this. And you can create a function public members that is accessible here now with read data that read data and store it. That's the admission no, the name, the English mark, the math, and the science math. Then we can compute it by calculating the total and putting it on a percentage. That's 100%. And we can show the data which will display the necessary information of a student or an object of a class. So try this out and let me know how it's going in the comment section. So bye. See you next time. Don't forget to like and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Code with True.